This week we're looking at 3 mysteries relating to an Iron Age fort that shouldn't be where it is nor how it is. It's a history mystery. And as well as being shocked by the antiquities we're going to have a look at today, I've also made a shocking decision in my life, possibly a shocking mistake, and I'll tell you about that later on. This is Castlehaven Bay on the Solway Coast in Scotland, and what do we have looming up above it there? Well, it's mystery number 1, that's what. Known as Castlehavendun, it is the only example of an Iron Age galleried dun in Galloway, and that was a bit of a mouthful. And it's D-shaped with an outer enclosure. But hey, what have they done here? These fortified Iron Age homesteads are commonplace, or were commonplace, in Argyll and the Western Isles of Scotland. We are down in the far southwest of Scotland. What is this doing here? Well, I don't know the answer to that, do I? I don't know the answers for everything. That was unnecessarily aggressive. Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I guess we could surmise that possibly some Iron Age chieftain fell out with the locals up in the Western Isles and sailed round the seaboard, landed here and built in the only way that he knew how. We do know that it is an Iron Age structure because of finds that have been discovered here over the years, and of course its design, this similarity to the Broch class of Iron Age buildings found up in the Western Isles. Our second history mystery here at Castlehavendun is this. What on earth have the antiquarians done to this dun? I'm going to say something now that is going to enable them in post-production to add the sound of a stylus being yanked off of a gramophone in that manner that documentary makers love. If you are stunned by the quality of the Iron Age remains here, then I have to tell you that all is not as it seems. I told you. Documentary makers do that when they want to signify that there's a significant development coming up in the narrative. And it also has the added advantage of waking up any viewers who may have nodded off by that stage. In 1905, the owner of this site, the Lord of Knockbrex, had it cleared and restored. There's another one. Before 1905, none of these walls stood any higher than 1.2 metres. I think that's 4 feet in the new post-Brexit form of measurement. Pre-1905, on the bay side of the fort, the walls were foundation level only. Door lintels were added, and apparently a line of white painted stones was left to mark where the Iron Age ended and the reconstruction began, but I can't find any sign of that now, 120 years on. Now, just like Stuart Ainsworth on the new Time team, I'm exploring the outer part of the enclosure with my GoPro. It's very apt for YouTube that he does that, I think. Round here we have an example of how the stairs worked, obviously part of this Edwardian reconstruction, but there are various examples like that here. There were no sort of built staircases to go to the upper level. All of the stairs were these stones up the inner walls. The D-shaped dun is there. You can just see the walls behind those bushes. If we come out and follow this round here like this, as ever, always difficult to show this on the camera, but there's another embankment that's running off there, another D-shaped sort of enclosure. And then I'm standing here in a slight dip in that embankment. It's running there. I doubt very much you'll be able to see it. It is D-shaped again, like the stone dun, but I suspect it's probably later. It has got stonework in it though. Look at that. More interesting lumps and bumps over there. I suspect this was a busy place once. Just spotted something else. I'm not too sure what Stuart Ainsworth would make of this. In actual fact, thinking about it and looking at these chained concrete blocks there, that could very well be some form of World War II defence, I imagine. Eat your heart out, Stuart. I think I'll leave it to Canmore to best summarise the dilemma we have with this Edwardian reconstruction of an Iron Age fortified homestead. As much a monument to the energetic enthusiasm of early 20th century antiquarians as to the needs and aspirations of an Iron Age chieftain. Handy that someone left that book there so I could read that quote. I don't really know what to make of this place. Personally, I would have preferred it if the antiquarians had left it be and we could have looked at the Iron Age remains as they were up until 1905. There are some that say that Lord Knockbrex and his team were extremely faithful to following the foundations, and that therefore what we are looking at does accurately reflect this unusual for this area Iron Age construction, but make of it what you will. The 1905 restoration also provided evidence in finds that the site was in use and occupied in the medieval period as well. And that enables us to seg seamlessly into our third history mystery here. Local lore has held for centuries that Castlehavendun was the last refuge in the 1300s for Edward Balliol. Unfortunately, my notebook has returned. I'm going to go and sit over there and I'll tell you a little bit about that. I'm going to have to speak to continuity because somehow my notebook is now over here. A Norman called John Balliol was gifted estates in England, and he later made a claim on the Scottish throne through marriage, and he did hold power as the King of Scotland for a brief period of time. But he was driven out, and it wasn't until 1332 that his son Edward Balliol came back to Scotland and claimed the throne. But in December of that year, or possibly January of 1333, Edward was forced to flee. Later in 1333, Edward Balliol returned to Scotland, this time supported by Edward III and his English army, all the Edwards together. But guess what? Edward Balliol fled yet again. 1334, he returned again, still supported by Edward III. He fled. 1335, fled. 1336, a truce was achieved between Edward Balliol and David II of Scotland, but David was having none of it. So in 1338, Edward Balliol fled. In 1346, David II was defeated in a battle, and Edward Balliol returned, this time raising an insurrection in, you wait for it, Galloway. But Edward was never successful in doing anything other than holding on to a small area of Galloway. And in 1356 he struck a deal with Edward III whereby he denounced his claim on the throne in return for a pension, and then he fled to end his days in Doncaster. Now we've had the Edward Balliol bit of the story, true Stuart Ainsworth new time teen GoPro style. Let's go back to that outer embankment that we saw. There's the stone dun, and then there is the mound that I talked briefly about earlier, and it does run off all the way around there as a sort of a outer D-shaped enclosure. So possibly, if there's any truth in this idea that Edward Balliol holed up here after 1346, you know, possibly this was an extension to the site to cater for his insurrection. Interesting that Edward Balliol held out here in Galloway for 10 years, from 1346 to 1356. Did this Iron Age hill fort provide him with his final refuge? The finds certainly do indicate that there was something happening here in the medieval period. 3 interesting history mysteries here at Castlehaven in Scotland. Number 1, we've got the fact that this is a style of fortified farmstead that shouldn't really be here in this part of Scotland. Number 2, we've then got this highly questionable 1905 antiquarian restoration of the site. And then number 3, I'm okay with that one, we've got this association with failed would-be King of Scotland, Edward Balliol. Did he hide out here for a while? I don't know. Sorry, that was unnecessarily aggressive again. Perhaps I've got something on my mind. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I have done something shocking. I've made a shocking life decision, and I'm going to tell you all about it. So what have I done, I hear you screaming at your devices? Basically, I've packed my work in, I've left my business, I've sold it without a plan, without a clue as to what I'm going to do next. And I've shocked myself by doing that. Even 10 years ago, I would not have done anything as reckless as that. So it seems as good a time as any to let you know that, very much encouraged by you lot in the comments a few videos back, I have now set up one of those buy me a coffee accounts, and you can find the details of it in the about section on the channel. I do assure you I'm not going to be relying on that to replace the income that I have perhaps recklessly thrown away. And any donations will go into future productions, be it equipment or helping with the travel costs. There's no obligation though. You can watch this channel and not buy me a coffee. That's fine. It's fine. It is an interesting thing to do, and you might question it, but I am 55. I don't think I've ever mentioned that on this channel before, and I really have just had enough of the business and everything that entails in 2024. Any of you know how you sign on for the dole nowadays? I presume it's an app.